Hey everybody, Dr. Perry Bard here, and on behalf of Dr. Eric Kaplan and our entire Disc Centers of America team, we wanted to send you this vitally crucial, vitally important video, which is titled, as you know, Decompression ALERT. Now, if you're curious as to why it is titled Decompression ALERT, my suggestion to you is in the next few minutes, take out a piece of paper and take some notes, because what we are about to share with you can change so many things in your world, your practice, your life, and yes, even your bank account as well. What we're going to talk about here is the simple fact that there is a divide, if you will, right now in our profession amongst the doctors that are what we call disc specialists, and the doctors, unfortunately, that just are not aware of the simple fact that if they were willing to pay the price, and when I say pay the price, meaning just study a little bit more, learn a little bit more, be educated a little bit more in the study of spinal disc care, then your life can change dramatically. And that's what I'll share with you here right now. The simple fact is that there is an alert right now in terms of what doctors are doing correctly and what doctors may not be doing as well as they possibly can. I'll share that with you in the brief time that we have together today. The first thing that I will tell you is this. If you are in the disc business, or if you are even curious about being in the spinal disc business, one of the most important things that you can do is how you project your brand. In other words, what you represent to your market, to your demographic, in terms of being the disc specialist that you are. So take some notes on this, because this is so vital, this is so crucial, and this is so important. It has to do, believe it or not, with Google. So what we'll share with you is this. The doctors, specifically the chiropractors, that have been marketing the conventional you-know-what, low back pain, leg pain, neck pain, mid-back pain, on Google, unfortunately, are getting such piss-poor results that they're being outmarketed and they're being really outperformed by the doctors that are disc doctors, specifically spinal decompression doctors, that are now marketing these words. In other words, these words, the following words, are appearing not only on their website, but they're appearing in Google campaigns, SEO, search engine optimization, social media, and more. The top three right now I will give you. Number one is MRI. In other words, think about it this way. In other words, if you're a patient and you're considering getting an MRI, or maybe your doctor told you need an MRI, or you're scheduled in some which way, shape, or form for an MRI, then what's going to happen if you're like most patients is you're going to start the education process, meaning you're going to start researching what is an MRI, what is the difference between an MRI and an X-ray, what is the MRI going to reveal, how does it help my doctor lay out a game plan and give me specific strategic options to be able to hopefully, you ready for this, avoid number two, epidural injections. Now, most patients, when they're being told that you may need an epidural injection, they're going online, they're doing searches. And what are they finding? They're finding doctors that give epidural injections. The last part, as you know, is microdiscectomies. Now, why microdiscectomies? The reason is really simple. The reason is because most patients, when they're being told they need back surgery, are not necessarily being told they need a laminectomy or a foraminotomy or metal in their back. They're not being told that. What they're being told is that this is a simple outpatient procedure known as a microdiscectomy. And the reason why you may potentially need this, if you're that patient, is because you've been told as a result of an MRI that you've got a spinal disc herniation. It could be a protrusion, could be a prolapse, could be a sequestered disc. This is the verbiage and the terminology you must get very, very comfortable with, because the reality is this. If you are, and no disrespect, but it is an alert, if you are a conventional chiropractor, and don't get me wrong, I started as a conventional chiropractor. Dr. Kaplan started as a conventional chiropractor. We all start as a conventional chiropractor, but prior to that, is the simple foundation that we are in the disc business. In other words, we all graduate with the same focal point, the motor unit, disc, nerve, bone. And the doctors that are specializing in non-surgical spinal care, whether you have an Acuspina, whether you have a DRX, whether you have a VaxD, a Hill table, whether you have a Spine Med, whether you have a Triton, DTS, you must know what your table can do and you must know what your table can't do. Trust me when I tell you that there are differences. You must learn this vital information, because when you put yourself out there the right way and you start positioning yourself in the right manner, and most importantly, letting patients know that they may not need an epidural injection, they may not need a microdiscectomy, they may not have to take Tramadol or Vicodin or Percocet or Oxycodone or Oxycontin, because as a result of the medical research. And that is what this alert is for. If you are not giving the proper medical research, if you are not explaining this to your patients, then trust me, doctor, you are on the outside looking in. We're talking about the Sheely study. We're talking about the Sheely-Caladius study. We're talking about the Ramos and Martin study. And if you want to do a little Google and you want to look at what these are, the Ramos and Martin study was the first study ever done to actually show that spinal decompression can create negative disc pressure. And if you can create negative disc pressure, then as a result, you can reduce the tension, the pressure, the irritation on the nucleus pulposus, on the annular fibers, and to be able to give that patient the best opportunity to hydrate the disc. That's what the Ramos and Martin study is all about. If you don't know about the Sheely-Caladius study, the McClure study, which is one of the greatest studies in history, then my suggestion is to start digging in. And my suggestion would be to put on your calendar the opportunity to hopefully try to get a seat at something known as the Chiro event. Now, for so many of you who don't know, this is a training that Dr. Kaplan and myself put together a number of years ago. It is the most popular training to learn about non-surgical spinal decompression, but it's really the best training to learn about the business of disc care, being a spinal disc specialist. If you've learned anything in the short time that hopefully you've studied a little bit about what Dr. Kaplan and myself have put out to the masses, you've learned that the secret, if you will, is in the brand of spinal disc care. When I talk about the brand, and when Dr. Kaplan talks about the brand, we're talking about the most popular brand in history. 13 pages deep on Google, meaning when you do a search for the things we mentioned, MRI, for disc herniation, for epidural injection, for microdiscectomy, Disc Centers of America is popping up 13 pages deep. That is an incredible amount of traction on the internet. Pun intended, for those who thought that spinal decompression is traction. What spinal decompression is the highest level of traction, and there's a measurable difference between spinal traction and non-surgical spinal decompression based upon the medical research. And that's what we share at these trainings. You need to be trained up and you need to be educated and understanding that you are so much more than just a chiropractor. You are potentially a go-to doctor in your marketplace that can educate patients properly based upon the medical research, based upon the science, based upon the clinical data, based upon facts. And when you talk to a patient face-to-face, eye-to-eye, as we always say, one-to-one and heart-to-heart, you want to give them facts. Now, if you can take, now here's the real secret. If you can take 10 years of learning as a chiropractor and compress that into 10 days, you think that's worth something? How about taking those 10 days and compressing it into 10 hours? That is why the training that is coming up, and I implore you, big word from a kid from Brooklyn, right? Implore. I urge you to be able to learn more about the treatment of non-surgical spinal disc patients with regards to utilizing non-surgical spinal care, regardless of the table you have. If you have a table and you are expecting that the salesman, if you will, is going to train you up to the point where you're good to go, well, guess what? That's half the battle. The other half is putting you in a dynamic around entrepreneurial, disc-specific doctors that have the new big idea. And that new big idea is really, really simple. That they are that much more to their market. And yes, if you can potentially save a patient from an epidural injection or from being addicted, as you know, to terrible, painful, toxic opioid medication, and also hopefully potentially saving a patient from possibly an unnecessary surgery, you are such a star. You are such a celebrity. You are so dialed in as a chiropractor who has an emphasis on non-surgical spinal disc care, and to be able to utilize the technology that you're afforded. This is the gift that keeps giving. I was so blessed. I was so fortunate, and I was so lucky, oh my gosh, 34 years ago, to be able to get hooked up, if you will, with really the doctor who dedicated himself to the education of chiropractors to be able to lift their prestige, lift their status, lift their celebrity, all based upon confidence, but confidence in knowing the information, confidence in knowing that as a non-surgical spinal disc doctor, you're able to capture market share that other chiropractors will never be able to capture, and more importantly, to be able to deliver a result based upon two things. Number one, under-promising. Number two, over-delivering. So if you want to be under-promised and you want to be over-delivered, my highest recommendation would be try to grab a seat at the upcoming training, www.thechiroevent.com. There are no contracts. There is no pressure. There's nothing to sign. This is a day of education. This is a day of expanding your vision. This is a day of learning what you could do in your market and giving you tools then and there on the spot that I promise you, after you get an opportunity to meet Dr. Kaplan, after you get an opportunity to meet some of the other doctors in that room that are just like you, and trust me when I tell you, they were just like me when they started. The difference is now they have 3 spinal decompression tables, 5 spinal decompression tables, 8 spinal decompression tables, 11 spinal decompression tables. And you might say, well, gee, did they run out and did they buy all those tables all at once? No. What they did was they got their hands on one table. They got a chance to attend the Chiro event. They learned what they could do to be able to be what we call BBM, bigger, better, more, to their market, to be able to position themselves correctly, and to be able to create the dream life that they envisioned as a chiropractor who is a specialist in non-surgical care. And yes, most importantly, for the doctors that are so entrepreneurial that are watching this, to be able to monetize those services in addition to other things that you do in your office, to be able to do cash programs, to be able to educate a patient on why it is in their best interest to not wait. It is all about the verbiage. It's all about the communication. It's all about the tools. And if you're exposed to this information at the Chiro event, I promise you that you'll walk out and you'll say, holy cow, I think I was over-delivered. I promise you, if you're able to get a seat. Now I say if. Why? Because if you've followed us for a while, you know it's standing room only when Dr. Kaplan and myself present this information. And we've got so many visuals, and we've got so many tools, and we've got so many cool things we put in your hand that when you walk out, you go, wait a minute. I'm digging this. I like it. I love it. I want more of it. And if you do, guess what's going to happen? Well, you got our phone number. You'll get back in touch with us. That's the way we roll. And obviously, if you're committed to the training of learning how, and this is not one of those things where you come out and you say, well, gee, you know, they were holding back some of the stuff. No, you're going to come away with notes. You're going to come away with tools. We're going to show you examples of what the largest doctors in the country are doing right now in non-surgical spinal care that are doing it based upon the facts, the medical research, understanding what their tables can do, understanding if they're going to go buy more tables, understanding that if they're going to use other technology concurrently or in concert. Is laser appropriate? What about neuropathy? Is neuropathy a cousin to spinal decompression? You bet it is. And you need to see what doctors are doing right now on the highest plateau. And that is the fun for Dr. Kaplan and myself. We're talking about the doctor, and when we're talking about Dr. Kaplan, the guy who created the National Spinal Decompression Certification Program, sold out every year, number one. Number two, the co-chairman of the International Medical Advisory Board on non-surgical spinal decompression, the co-chairman of the International Disc Education Association. Why do I tell you that? Is it to impress you? Well, sort of, a little bit. But it's really to impress upon you that you better be very, very careful as to who you're listening to. And what I mean by that is this. As you know, that it's not a secret. There's a lot of noise out there. So be very careful who you're listening to. Listen to the doctors that have the pedigree, the knowledge, the background, the resume, and the history in terms of owning how to command the education of a spinal disc patient. That's what we teach, that's what we show, that's what we share, that's what we create, and that's what we give. And if you think that's something, you ain't seen nothing yet. What I'm going to tell you is this. Try to grab a seat. I don't have to motivate you anymore, because the doctors that are sitting there right here, right now, know that they're watching this for a reason. They know that they could wish, they could hope, they could pray for the world to hand them something. And they're all good. The wishing is good. The hoping is good. The praying is the best. But until you take an action step and commit yourself to learning how a spinal disc patient is different than other patients, how you need to bridge the gap from a chiropractic patient to a spinal decompression patient, how you are able to educate that, how you're able to overcome objections, how you're able to handle financials, how you're able to really impress upon the patient that they found the best doctor in their market to save them from a lot of bad stuff and to hopefully give them back a quality of life that is potentially unmatched. So yes, alert, alert, alert. It is game on for the doctors that have the opportunity to grab a seat at the upcoming Chiro event. Go to www.thechiroevent.com and come away with content, tools, ammunition, and just a spectacular day of learning. And I promise you, you will be blown away. So go to the website, www.thechiroevent.com. I'll keep my fingers crossed for you on behalf of the one and only Dr. Eric Kaplan. We can't wait to see you there. Your life, your practice, oh yeah, and even your bank account will change, all for the better. See you there.